Welcome to Tech and Test, where we unravel the intricacies of technology, delve into the world of software engineering, and challenge the boundaries of software testing. Your host, Peter Johnson, will help you navigate the digital landscape, exploring the latest in tech, sharing insights into software development, and talking to the people that drive our digital world. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
Welcome to episode 3 of Tech and Test.
Welcome.
With me in my living room is Bruno. Welcome to my living room.
Thank you very much.
So are you comfortable?
I am comfortable, and I can see your cat Matilda is very comfortable as well. She's sleeping next to me.
Nice. Just wanted to check you're comfortable with the cat being next to you.
100%. I'm not as comfortable with you being next to me, but with the cat,
100%. I actually think I know what you do. I think you call yourself an implementation manager, right?
Wow, what nice friends I've got. They don't even know what I do.
So could you tell the audience of Tech and Test what you do?
Sure. So I currently work for a cybersecurity company named BeyondTrust. We are very focused on the PAM, the Privileged Access Management space. And I'm currently a senior manager for the implementation and engineering team there.
Awesome. So you do, I guess you must have a lot of knowledge or some knowledge on what cybersecurity is.
Well, I would hope so. At least I try. At least I try to get and to remain up to speed.
Brilliant. So I have usually when someone says something like that, I almost fall off my chair. But I haven't done that yet. So let's see if you make me fall off my chair in this episode.
I'd hope not, especially because you're sitting on a sofa and not on a chair. But I understand your point.
Well, that's true. When I was doing this with recording my first episode with Devendra, I was sitting on that chair over there.
Okay, then.
So I think that risk may have gone.
Fair enough.
So Bruno, could you just give me a little bit of a journey of where you started and how you've ended up being did I get this right? Implementation manager.
Yeah, implementation and engineering manager. Yeah.
Okay. So, could you tell me how you what did you tell me how you started, how you got into tech?
Absolutely. So, as a kid, I've always loved computers. I really, really loved computers. I would buy those magazines at the store that would talk about how to fix that problem, how to do this, new hardware, and all that kind of stuff. And I just really loved it. And I thought, you know what? That's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to be in IT. Back in the day, there wasn't, or at least to me, there wasn't that many things cybersecurity related. It was all dial-up modems back in the day. And I started my journey learning computers by installing Windows on my first personal computer because I messed it up. I had to fix it. And the only way to fix it was to actually reinstall Windows. Okay. So that was my first troubleshooting experience. And from there, I went to school. People might be curious about knowing, do you have a degree? Do you have a master's or anything like it? No, I've never been to university. I took a course in Portugal that we call professional technical course, which instead of doing 10th, 11th and 12th grade just before uni, right, and having a very generalistic course, you have a very methodical professional approach to a profession that you want to do. I see. And I thought, you know what, I want to be a tech support engineer. And that's where I started. I done my 3 years. I was the top student of that year at school. And I started working for a bank in Portugal, doing second and third line support. That's what I started doing. However, going by, I was always super, super curious about cybersecurity. Right. I would hear about these hackers on the news and how they would do these what seemed to be magical things that I have no idea how someone could have done it. And I said, I want to do that. I want to be in that field. I want to learn to do the magical things those guys are doing. I wasn't sure on how or where to start, to be honest.
Did you like magic as a child?
I did, yeah. I did have some magical apparatus things at home that I would make things appear and disappear, some magic boxes where you put a coin and you do something. But the thing is, and it was a little bit the same with cybersecurity, you think those things are magic.
Yeah.
Obviously they aren't. There's science behind it. And I was still fascinated when I found or learn the science behind the things that people do to, well, be hackers or compromise systems or stuff like it. It still brings a smile to my face even nowadays.
Well, you are smiling, and that is a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. I would hope so. Yeah.
So, interesting story. So you started off in kind of a support role, and you had a deliberate intention to work in cybersecurity.
Correct.
So this wasn't a sort of thing that happened by chance. It was a deliberate intention, and you worked towards achieving that.
Yeah, so basically when I came to the UK from Portugal, I already started doing some research and some studying into cybersec. Because I wanted to be a hacker, then I would, what do hackers do? What are the day-to-day things that they need to learn and study and work on and be proficient at? And I started just using Google to look at stuff. I was like, how to be a hacker. And there are these hacker books, the Hacker Manifesto, that just give you a little bit of the ideology of what it is to be a hacker. And people sometimes think, hacker is such a bad thing. No, there are the good type of hackers and the bad type of hackers.
Right. So what kind of hat? You can see I've got a cap on the sofa next to me. This is a black hat, right?
That is a black hat. Normally...
So can you explain what the colours of the hats are? I don't really know.
There are more than you could probably just say because people come with new ideas every day. Though the most famous ones are the black and the white hat hacker. The black hat is the one that it's considered to be a cyber criminal, where they hack into enterprises,
right? So illegal activities.
Illegal activities, yeah. And then you got the white one, which is the good kind of hacker. Is the one that studied and learned on how to do those things, and with the knowledge that they've got, they then try to implement that knowledge into defending companies, governments, etc. Then you've got what it's called the grey hacker, where it's someone in the middle. They work with the good people, but if necessary, they might do something on the side and not be the good guys, so to speak.
Okay, so because you're in my living room, I need to know which side you're on.
Definitely on the side of the white hats. The thing, it's funny that you mentioned the colors of the hats, because it's the same thing as security teams. You have what it's called the red team, which are called attack teams, where they are the penetration testers that you hire to do a penetration testing assessment on your network, devices, infrastructure, and even people, because you do hack people as well, not just computers.
Sure.
Then you've got what's called the blue team, which are the guys that are trying to defend and put defenses into places, configurations, make sure that things are secure. And then you've got what it's called the propelled team, which is a mix between the two, where they do one and another. So color is quite important in terms of the role you play within this ecosystem. A little bit, yeah. I wouldn't say that it's very important, but it just helps to identify a little bit of what you do and where you sit in the cybersecurity
I guess
space.
What kind of actor you are within
Yes,
this.
Yeah.
Cool. And so how would you, thinking back to Mr. Young Diaz or Young Bruno, right?
Yep.
Because you've been in, I assume you've been in tech for more than a few years.
For quite a few, since I was 18, yeah. So
okay, so
I'm almost 38 now, so 20 years.
I've made a note. What sort of advice would you give to that 18-year-old, right? Like, knowing what you know now, because you've had a career, you've had loads of experiences, you've become an implementation manager, and you've obviously gained a lot of experience working and managing teams and that kind of thing. If you had to wind the clock right back, what kind of advice would you give to your younger self about, I don't know, maybe about tech or maybe about your career, or what are the sort of things that stand out?
I think one of the things that I would say to my younger self is to learn a little bit more about all the different aspects that there are to technology, especially in the cybersecurity space. Not try to rush as much into a single thing, because coming into cybersecurity, it's not important to only know how to hack things. To hack things, you need to understand them. And to understand them, not only you need to understand one or two concepts or two technologies, you need a whole different stack of technologies.
Right.
I think I was so tunnel visioned into becoming a penetration tester that I just focused on the things that I thought were important. The thing is, there are just even a penetration tester. You can have web app penetration testers. You can have network penetration testers. You can have physical security penetration testers, people with lockpicks and all those kind of things that you've seen the movies. It does happen.
Right.
There are people that are hired to actually physically hack into locations to find out how secure they are. Social engineering know how to hack people. Scripting, exploitation, coding, because coding itself as well, obviously you being in that space, it's very important to understand how an operating system operates, how software operates, how it deals with the CPU, with memory registers, with memory itself. Because on the exploitation part on software, if you understand how you do it, you can manipulate the software to pass information that you want it to be used and executed rather than the normal operations of the software.
Yes, I think the NSA have just released like some guidance about what are secure and unsecure languages. I think Rust came up as a secure language, right? So I think some of this is kind of looked at by the security agencies a bit more.
Probably. The thing is, the language is only as secure as the people that are writing it. That's pretty much because one simple example that many people in the engineering space will probably understand, it's prepare statements, for example. You are making a database call. You don't write a SQL query that it's just a string. Because if you think about how it operates, you're sending a select star from, and then let's say you want to get the input of a table name. It's down to user to say, oh, I want to select everything in the employees table. And you type in employees, the query will run select start from employees, and it will output the expected results. However, on the SQL language, if you put a comma where it's expected, then suddenly you're passing it something that it's going to interpret as a command. So you're running out of the actual string that it's supposed to run, and you can start executing commands. That's something called SQL injection.
Yeah.
There are many other different things to this, but this is just one very simple one to understand. Let's say as well on C or C++, you define a variable with an integer with a certain amount of bits allocated to it. And then let's say you allocate 8 bits to it. And then on the input, you send it 12 bits. What happened to the other 4? If it's not properly sanitized, the other 4 will overflow into memory, and you can execute things with it as well. So there are many, many different topics on cybersecurity. The thing is, I rushed to it, and I think might have missed some other areas that I might have found really interesting, and maybe I would have loved it more than being a penetration tester, like being a security researcher, or working in cryptography, or whatever other areas you could choose from. And I just narrow it down too much, I think.
I see. So what made you decide to give so much focus and attention to penetration testing or pen testing?
To be honest, because I thought it was cool as heck. Seriously, that was the main reason. I would look at the guys and I thought, these guys are wizards, man. The things that they do, it has to be magic, right? And it just had that mystique to myself. The thing was, when I started actually studying properly for it, so I studied with offensive security. They had something called the Offensive Security Certified Pen Tester, OSCP, which was considered the de facto certification to get if you wanted to be a pen tester, because it's very difficult, very hands-on course where it just doesn't matter if you learn the things, you actually have to put them into practice. So they've got this network environment with 3 different networks that you can pivot into, and you only have access to one to start with. And then you start hacking into machines, you gain access to them, and then you discover that some of them have 2 network cards, and there is another different network those machines are connected to, and you have to pivot between one network and the other and everything. And they have a motto called try harder, which is you would ask them for advice on things, and their advice would be try harder. Oh, I don't know, this box, I've been at it for hours, I haven't been able to crack it yet. Do you know if I should focus on a specific service, on a specific port? Is there a specific technology? Try harder, try harder. And at the very beginning of the course, they tell you something that if you want to learn on how to defend something, you should know how the people attacking it are operating. And that really stuck with me. And I think that led me to think, okay, maybe penetration testing and being a hacker and knowing how to exploit things, it's just a step into what I really want to do. And it made me, in a sense, a better defender, a better blue teamer, because if I know the signs of an actual attack, I can identify it, I can help and stop it, I can put measures into place to prevent those attacks from happening to start with, or if they start doing it, I can have an identity system that will identify that threat with a signature-based model and say, oh, this is a typical signature of someone doing a port scan or doing an exfiltration of data or running a rootkit, something like it.
So can I ask,
Sure.
we live in the age of AI and artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Right. So I think the information age is sort of coming to an end as the AI age has started. That's kind of how I like to think about it.
Yeah.
How much of the tooling do you think is used maybe for pen testing or for other kinds of threat detection is driven by AI?
Okay, so AI, there's a lot of companies and a lot of tools already making use of AI. One very simple one, it's antiviruses, right? So antiviruses, the way they work, it's identifying signatures of operations, code in memory, etc. So if antiviruses has been taught by humans to say, hey, if you identify this type of code that does action A, that triggers response B, and with response B triggers action C, etc. By identifying those signatures, antivirus will go like, yeah, this is suspicious, and a flag will be raised and possibly blocked.
I guess a concern I have is how do I know what the AI has actually learned and hasn't learned? Because if it's not rule-based from these are the set of rules it runs, how do we know how secure we are if we're relying on these sort of tools that are making decisions based on, non-deterministic models?
I think at the moment it's the same as every AI technology where there needs to be some human input behind it, where it's looking at the data sets that it's outputting, the information that it's putting through, overlooking the models it's creating in making sure does it make sense or not, right? It's like the same way you'd have AI trying to learn on, let's say, how to play chess. I'm a chess player. I love playing chess, so I'm familiar with it. You give it some signs to say, hey, a capture of a piece is good. It's beneficial. Doing checks, checkmate obviously being the end goal, it's beneficial. And you attribute it point-based system to say, this is good, give it more points. This is bad, remove points. This is okay, medium points. The same thing with signatures and the way that it learns itself on how to behave. If it's going down a certain path that you agree it's beneficial, then you give more emphasis, more value to that route. Obviously, I'm not an expert in AI per se, but as far as applying it to cybersecurity, it's definitely going to, it's here and it's going to keep being here.
Definitely. So Bruno, let's pause there and talk about mindset. So you've learned a lot about cybersecurity. You've become a manager. That takes a lot of confidence and resilience to, in my opinion, to achieve those things. What are some of the kind of behavioral traits do you think are important to thrive in the InfoSec space or to become, the next Bruno?
I think that's a very good question in the sense that I feel the cybersecurity space is an area where you do have to have some personal traits to be successful in. It's an area that what's true today, it might not be tomorrow. What works today, it might not work tomorrow. What threat actors are doing today, it might be stopped tomorrow by the good guys, and then the threat actors will have to find different ways. It's ever changing. So I think you need to be an extremely curious person. You have to have that need for information to know how to do things within yourself. You have to be comfortable researching things for yourself. Most of the things I've learned were just from Googling.
Right.
It's, hey, I want to do A. Hey, these guys are doing B. How do I do it? And from there, just keep looking at resource, getting deeper and deeper and deeper into topics. You have to be confident in the sense, but that confidence should be coming from experience and from knowledge, not just from being cocky in that sense.
Sure. So I guess, if you were to hire me to join in your team, the fact that my computer crashed and I installed Windows.
That is a good start. No, seriously, that is a good start, because a lot of the people in the space, because they don't have degrees or they don't have someone that just taught them an education that goes from point A to point Z.
Yeah.
They had to find their way. They had to see what works for them. And they would have definitely stumbled upon things that they have absolutely no knowledge about. They might not even be comfortable in researching. It might be outside of their comfort zone.
Sure.
And they will have to just keep pushing, keep going at it until you eventually find the answer. And that's what makes a good cybersecurity specialist or cybersecurity person, to be honest.
I see. So what you've told me is really like the personal attributes or the behavioral attributes of like being curious and learning, having the inquisitive mind to continue learning is quite important.
To me, that's the most important thing, because technical skills, there are smarter people, less smart people. I don't dispute that. The thing is, the technical skills, they can always be learned.
Yeah.
But your personal traits, it's much harder, because you've acquired them over a long period of time, right? Your habits, you have acquired them over a long period of time. And to change those, it's a lot more difficult than learning how to program in C, how to write SQL, how to understand networking, all those other topics that are obviously important. Don't get me wrong, experiencing those is important.
Yeah.
But would be way down the road compared
I
to
guess,
everything else.
those standard technologies that you mentioned, like networking, C or whatever programming language it is, they're well documented and they're well kind of understood tracks that people go on, right? So I guess, if someone doesn't have those technical skills, it's not the end of the world, because there's a known way of teaching these people, right? There's loads of resources available.
Correct.
And if I mention AI again, there's loads of large language models that can assist maybe with at least teaching languages and learning how to program, right?
Yeah.
Or improving your code in theory. So, Bruno, what advice would you give to someone who wants to come in, into cybersecurity or join your team or something like that, right? Like I'm looking at maybe someone's just graduated, or maybe they've left college, or maybe they're looking for a career change. What kind of advice would you give this person?
So the first one would definitely be looking in those personal traits. If you have those, great. Go into the technical bits. It's like we've briefly discussed. There are so many different areas to cybersecurity, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on which one do you want to do, but obviously you won't know until you've tested a few. So test a few different areas. See if you'd like to be one of the guys attacking. See if you want to be one of the guys defending. If you want to be attacking or defending, which area? Do you want to focus on web apps? Do you want to focus on infrastructure? Do you want to focus on network? Do you want to focus on APIs? Do you want to be a scripter or a developer that works in tools? Do you want to be a cybersecurity researcher? Do you want to be an analyst that will be looking at vulnerabilities, etc.? So experience all those kind of things.
And how do you get that experience? Like,
by doing it. And it might sound very random advice and not very precise, but really the things, it's just practice.
The technical hands-on of...
There are many things. So I would say, me personally, learn a scripting language.
Yeah.
Start with Python. Easy to write, easy to read, very functional. After you learn scripting or learn a programming language, understand networking concepts, understand TCP/IP and the TCP/IP stack, how computers operate, how networks are created. If you understand networking, then maybe go into Linux. Most of the tools are written in Linux. Be familiar with the command line. When you're hacking or accessing other boxes, you don't normally have a graphical interface. You're accessing them through a command line. So knowing how the command line operates and how to create tasks, cron jobs, how to look at disk partitions, how to search for files, how to search for information on files. So yeah, understanding Linux and operating systems in general, it's a good thing. Then web apps, learn how web apps operate, client-server communications. And there are so many free resources you can use.
Yeah.
It's very important for you to demonstrate that you're curious about it and you've practiced it. Like, you know what CTFs are? They're called capture the flag events. You will have an exercise with a vulnerable web application on port 8080, and they will just say, hey man, on port 8080, you've got a web application. It's possibly vulnerable to cross-site scripting. It's vulnerable to code injection. It's vulnerable to SQL injection. There's might be some vulnerability that it's particularly vulnerable to, and they might give you hints to what it is so that you can practice those.
Cool. And have you got any examples of what these websites are?
Yeah, you got Pico CTF.
Right. Pico CTF.
Yeah, Pico CTF.
Okay.
It's a very good beginning one.
Okay.
You've got Hack the Box, and I think they've got a paid service version now where you can have a more structured approach to different types of things. Like you can learn how to exploit Active Directory, you can learn how to exploit APIs, you can learn how to exploit the many different things about web applications, vulnerable services. I believe some of them even tell you about proper code exploitation, where a program is poorly designed and it allows for some kind of code injection, memory injection.
Very cool. So are these free, or are these like subscription services?
You have quite a number of them free.
Okay.
You have something called Damn Vulnerable. I don't know the exact name now.
Sure.
Damn Vulnerable application, something like it, where you just got an image with a web application that it's so freaking vulnerable, and it has all different types of ways to be exploited.
Right.
It's something that if you're a self-starter and you're okay in learning yourself, investing time into searching for things, it's absolutely brilliant. You then can create your own labs. You buy a cheap server with some storage, with some computing power and some memory, and then you just run a lot of VMs on it. You download all these ISOs or VM images, you just run them, and then you try to exploit them. Because to me, demonstrating that you can do it and that you've had the willingness yourself to start looking into it and delving into it, it shows me that you have those traits. You are curious, you are persistent, you are passionate about it, and you've had the experience and the knowledge to apply those concepts, or at least you've learned them in order to be able to apply them. To me, that would put you right on the top of the list to being hired.
Very cool. Yeah. So I think what you're looking for is really self-starter, someone who has used their own initiative to do this, right? So, Bruno, you've mentioned you work for an organization to me that you deals with privileged access management. Can you talk a little bit about what this is?
Sure. So, privileged access management deals with everything that has to do with your privileged accounts. So, most of the time, these accounts will be living in Active Directory. They might be local accounts on some Linux servers, some network devices, and they are normally the price target or threat actors. You can obviously gain access to low privileged accounts, but then because they're low privileged means that there's not a lot you can do. You can't create users, you can't change passwords, you can't create services, etc. And it makes it hard to get something that we call persistence on the machines. If you can't create services that will connect back to you, know where to hide them, etc., you might get access to that machine. But again, if you need it, if someone turns the machine off, the user logs off, the process stops running, you lose access to the machines.
I see.
So imagine your day-to-day IT administrator, right? The way best practices dictates is you will have a low privileged user that you use to log into the machines and do your day-to-day operation. And then only when you need to get access to a high privileged account, that's when you get it.
I see.
The way that we offer broad range of services and products that go from a password vault solution, where we will scan and identify your privileged accounts. We'll onboard them onto the vaulting solution. And then we'll make sure that passwords are complex, they're being rotated every now and then. we will give access to your low privileged users to request access to those highly privileged accounts. You can get a system where you need approval from 1, 2, 3 different people to guarantee that you are who you say you are, and you need the access in the time that you need it to do something that you actually do need to use it for.
I see. So can I give an example? So
Sure.
Let's say I'm working on a production system, and let's say this production system may be in the cloud, or maybe, there's a role where someone maybe has to access customer production data. They for a specific need, business need, right?
Yep.
And maybe this data could be, say it's a voice speech recognition system, and customers' audio files are being uploaded to a particular storage bucket. Would this system kind of allow the engineer that maybe is on call, or the engineer that's doing this for a specific purpose, to have access for a limited time to access that particular storage bucket?
Absolutely. And it might be self-approved depending on the time of the day. It can validate against some integration systems like ServiceNow, for example,
right?
Where you can, is there a specific incident in the name of this user, and they all need to match in order for access to be released.
Wow.
Access would be then launched through our platform, so the requesting user would never even see the password for that service or that system. They would just seamlessly get connected. A session would spawn up, and then you would do what you need to do. The other thing that we also do is we can manage the privilege of the users and elevate and downgrade as necessary. Let's say you are on a Linux machine and you want to do an operation that needs sudo elevations, right? And you can have a configuration that if that's something that you and your role determine that you should be doing for that specific access only, let's say you need to manage a system file, config file for Kerberos, for SSH, for example, right? When you try to, say, vim that specific file to edit information on it, we would automatically elevate your privileges just to do that operation alone. Your user would still be your user.
Right.
Your general permissions would be your general permissions. But for that specific task, you'd get sudo access into that file to do the operation you need to do. As soon as you exit out of it, those accesses are gone.
Very cool. So you're securing your security structure, I guess, or your security posture by limiting access to only the operations that need the access.
Exactly. And again, really, really securing the privileged access so that people just don't have passwords to access it.
Right.
All the access, it's controlled by a centralized system.
Yeah.
That centralized system not only rotates and guarantees those passwords and accounts are secure, there is a trail log every time someone accesses it or requests access to it. The sessions they themselves can be recorded so that if anyone wants to see what you've done on them, they can just simply replay them, right? And then obviously where they are stored is a highly secured environment as well that's been hardened up, toughened up to make it as hard as possible to get into. So yeah, privileged access management is all about that, securing those very highly privileged accounts to make sure that only the right people have access to them. They can only do the things that they should be doing with them, and then you can audit and review them and even prevent actions from being taken on them. Let's say you don't want lateral movements within your network because you've got access to a box. You don't want to SSH into a different box with that user that is highly privileged. You can just block it. And yeah, I think PAM is a great place to be in. It's one of the de facto fields that companies just keep chasing after and want to be better at. So I'm super glad that I've made it to where I am today.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And congratulations for making such an impact to organizations which have, I imagine, a whole bunch of these use cases, right?
100%.
The world is becoming less secure. There's loads more threats, I think, online.
Absolutely.
So I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you. I try.
I guess, moving away from organizations and looking at the individual, right? We've all got phones. We've all got, particular types of accounts, right?
Yep.
I won't mention what accounts, but there are loads of accounts online, I imagine people could have, right? Which could range from all sorts of services. What are, something that springs to mind is, you always read in the news occasionally of another company that's gone, there's been a data breach, right? So what are the sort of things we can do as individuals to protect ourselves from data breaches that, these companies have, or maybe just general security things which are an absolute must in today's age? What advice would you give?
I think there's a multitude of different things that you could do. One that probably a lot of people speak to, and it's probably out there quite often, it's one, don't give your information to anyone else, anyone that you don't know.
Yeah.
Really think when someone's asking you for information, your details, your personal details, always think if it makes sense to give it to them, and if it would be something that someone on their position would actually ask. Social media, it's very dangerous. A lot of people don't realize it. So today there's technology with AI called deepfakes.
Yeah.
Someone that has 5 or 6 different angles of your face on pictures, they could just totally recreate your face on videos. You can have a video of someone killing someone else, and they could put your face as being the killer. Don't post things that you don't really need to post. Don't reutilize passwords. That's a very common mistake. So I know of a lot of people, myself included, a long time ago, where I used a very common password that I use for my accounts on a website. That website got compromised. They got access to that website's database, and the passwords weren't hashed. So plain to see for everybody. Once someone has your password on a service, they will just try to reutilize it on everywhere else. So let's say you love cats and you go to a cat forum because you love to look at cat pictures, and you create an account there, and you put your regular username and a password that you use for your Facebook, for your Instagram, for your bank account. If that website gets hacked and that database gets leaked, which it will eventually, people will have access to your username and password, and they will try to utilize them. And then they will have access to your Facebook, to your Amazon, to your iTunes, to your banking system, to everything else. So really don't reutilize passwords. If you have to use a password manager, use it. It creates very complex passwords, or you can create them yourself. And then you just store them, and all you really need to remember is your one password that is on that system. People sometimes think this is a joke, or they think this is something of a James Bond movie. Internet of Things, it is a thing. Having devices connected to the internet, it's very common nowadays.
Yeah.
Now, think about it. I've actually seen, when I was in Portugal on holiday the other day, I've seen a smart toothbrush with AI, and I'm like, what the heck does a toothbrush need AI for, or be connected to the internet, right? Think about those things. Is it something that you actually need? Do you need one more thing at home connected to the internet that could be yet another entry point onto your network? You use an operating system, make sure it's updated. Every single update, make sure it's automatic and applied as soon as it's out. Same thing with every software you use. Make sure it's up to date. It has the latest security patches, because if it has a patch, there is a high possibility there's a vulnerability attached to it. And if there is a vulnerability attached to it, attackers will know how to exploit it. So if you don't fix it, it's just like you're just leaving one key to one of the doors on your home right there, right then. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And regarding to phones, have antivirus on your phone. Same thing on your computer. Have firewalls if necessary. And again, it depends on person to person. You might be someone that has a high profile. High profile people will need more security measures than low profile people, because the bigger the target is, or the more incentive someone has to get into a certain target, the more people are likely to go for it. The higher the payout is, the more people will be interested in going for that. So
I see. Yeah. And I think one thing, you didn't mention was two-factor authentication, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So even if someone does have your password because it's been leaked, they can't access your account immediately.
I wouldn't say they can't access your account immediately. For example, my company actually found a vulnerability in Okta recently that was being exploited in the wild, and we were the one that alerted them to it.
Okay.
And it's very public. It was in the news. BeyondTrust became quite famous because of it. If someone's got access to the two-factor authentication company, they will have access to the two-factor authentication that you have. There are exploits around it. There are people that do stressing on your Okta, where, for example, Okta is being as a two-factor authentication mechanism, right? Where they just keep stressing you out until you eventually get tired of it and you accept it. Or they might try to time it with a time where you would normally be accessing your organization or that website, and you would normally need the two-factor authentication key or approval. They will do it at a time that it makes you think it's yourself doing it, and you'll accept it. Or they use social engineering to do it.
I see. I guess the best way for 2FA is to use like physical key, sticks or something like that. Which,
We actually use something called YubiKeys.
Yes.
And that's exactly it. That's just a very tiny piece of hardware that you put on your device, and it acts as the two-factor authentication mechanism for you. But again, nothing, it's 100% unhackable. That's just a myth. The things that you do is you try to make it as hard as possible, as time-consuming as possible, so that the time and money that they spend, it's less than what they actually get out of hacking something.
I guess if they've got enough time, resources, and money, you can get into anything.
Yeah, you look at state-sponsored threat actors, right? They've got unlimited time, unlimited funds. So if they really want to get at something, they will eventually get at it. So if you make it that they need 100 people working on a problem for 100 days straight, and then you think at how much that costs, if they hack that service or they gain access to that service, all they take out of it, it's worth £10. Are they actually going to go through the trouble of doing it? Probably not.
Yeah.
Now, if they spend £100,000 on attacking a target, and the information or whatever it is that they get out of it is worth 10 billion, of course they're going to try to do it.
Yeah.
So make it harder, make it as costlier as possible, and hopefully they'll leave it alone.
Bruno, I like to say we've come to the end of my episode.
Or
your episode. Well, it's been nice to see you on the Tech and Test couch. I really appreciate it. And if anything, you've made me feel less secure.
I'm really sorry, but the more you know about it, that's how people tend to feel about it. And it's true. So, but hopefully with the things we've discussed, people can implement some strategies for themselves and be more secure in their day-to-day life and day-to-day cyber operations and things they do online, and be more careful about what they share and who they share it with. So if this is something that prevents someone from being hacked or scammed, I think we've done our job. Yeah, and thank you for sharing your story and your journey. I'm super happy, and I hope this drives more people into cybersecurity. We need you guys. We need people, good people. So yeah, feel free to hit me up if anyone wants to find anything else or anything more about me or about what I do or any advice. I'm more than happy to share. Brilliant. Cool. And where can people find you? Well, LinkedIn is a good place. Okay. So I don't know if I'll add you to the show notes. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you can put my LinkedIn profile in there if you want. And yeah, people can just reach out to me through LinkedIn. And if I have the time, when I have the time, I'm more than glad to get back to whoever I can and whoever wants information. So thank you. Thank you, Bruno Diaz. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Peter. Hello, it's Peter. Thank you for listening to this episode of Tech and Test. I personally appreciate it, and I hope you got something out of it too. If you're interested in subscribing, please do, because then you don't miss any episode I've created. And you can also visit techandtest.co.uk, which has all the episodes I've created. And you can visit peterintest.com for my personal blog too. So I'll see you on the next episode.